All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. We have another great guest here today, and we're switching it up a little bit. As you've been seeing my content lately, a lot of NBA playoffs because that is the talk of the town right now. It's everywhere. It's almost to the NBA finals. By the time we're listening to this, you could be watching the NBA finals because of just how far the Pacers and Knicks series keeps continuing on to game six. But again, I'm going to stop blabbering about the NBA playoffs because we have Jason Fitz here, Yahoo Sports' own, from the inside coverage, helping us break down all of the biggest topics here of the NFL offseason. As you know, this time of year is all about predicting. It's all about analyzing the moves, and it's all about projecting what we hope and what we think will happen here in the 2025-2026 season. Jason, welcome to the show. Say what's up to the Show About Sports crew.
No, A, I appreciate you having me. B, I just laugh because you're right. Like in an NBA world, like this used to be the time where everything shut down and all we talked about was what was going to happen. You know, when I worked for Fox Sports Radio on the weekends, like all we talk about is the NBA in theory, but it's not because the NFL is always king. Like the fact is they have built this model, and look, we're going to get our seventh different champion over the last 7 years in the NBA. That's the ultimate parity. Yet we sit here and talk about the NFL like it has the ultimate parity when in fact it's dynastic and has been for generations. So like it's interesting to me that the NBA's parity is at the top. The NFL's parity is at the bottom. Like you got to be really bad to stay bad for a long time, you know? So it's just wild to me that the NFL has found a way to sort of sell the sizzle in a way that the NBA is wildly jealous of, for sure. It's awesome. There's no such thing.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. And I'm a fan of both, as everybody knows, listening to this and whatnot. I'm a huge fan of both sports for multiple reasons. But again, yeah, whenever I'm writing threads or I'm writing content about the NFL, there's always a storyline going on. I mean, we could talk about Stephon Diggs for a second. We can talk about the QB battles. We can talk about the draft for 3 months after the draft if you wanted to. That's just how the content is king in that space. But the NBA playoffs, that is the time where the meat is on the bone, if you will, for all of this content for them. So it is pretty cool, but I'm excited to talk NFL today. We're going to do this structured in a little bit of a different way. We're going to go through 3 different segments here for the audience. We're going to start with biggest questions. Then we're going to go through who breaks through this season. And then last but not least, risers and fallers. And I'm excited to see what Jason thinks. So Jason, I'm going to kick it over to you to start this off. What is one of your biggest questions heading into the 2025 season, off season, this, that, or the other?
Yeah, I think simply for me, the biggest question is why is Aaron Rodgers worth this? You know, and by that I mean look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers have as a roster, look at how they're constructed, and look at the division they're in. I would make the argument, even if you want to be an absolute super fan of Aaron Rodgers and say, you know what, look at how well he played in December, which is true. The numbers were really good for Aaron Rodgers in December. Even if that's where you want to gravitate to. All right, so take the best month of last season and then answer me this question, not based on lifetime of work, but based just on this year. Would you have Lamar, Joe Burrow, or Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback? If you could pick any one of those 3, I think we know the answer. I mean, at this point, Aaron Rodgers is a clear and distant third place. So all of this, is Aaron Rodgers going to play for the Steelers? I'm like, for what? And that's the part of this that's really confusing because let's play it forward now. Okay, so the Steelers get Aaron Rodgers. He looks like a 41-year-old that maybe is a little past his prime. He's okay. He's not great. The defense for the Steelers isn't as good as the Jets defense was last year. They're in a tougher division in an AFC. So let's just say, given a little bit of benefit of the doubt, not all of it, that we see our first Mike Tomlin losing season. Let's just say he goes 8-9. Okay? He goes 8-9 with Aaron Rodgers. In a year, people are going to be clamoring for Mike Tomlin's job, which is only funny to me because you can't win without a quarterback. And the team's never bad enough to get a quarterback. They're never good enough to get the right quarterback that they need right now. Like they're stuck. So like Steelers fans are stuck in the ultimate purgatory of like the rest of it seems like it makes sense. And my question to everybody is just going to be like, what did you expect from Tomlin? You can only do so much. So I think the Steelers are more sort of boxed in than any team coming into this year. They can't meet the expectations. They won't have the quarterback, even if Aaron Rodgers is any good. And if Aaron Rodgers is bad, this thing goes off the rails. Like I just cannot believe that this could be the way that Mike Tomlin ends up being pushed out the door and everyone else is going to flock to want him as their coach.
100% agree. Couldn't agree more. I was listening to Albert Breer last night kind of break down kind of the inside scoop, if you will, on what maybe conversations are being had on why Aaron's not actually in the building yet, aka not signed to the team, not actually decided to play football, if you will, across the board. And it kind of sounds like, Aaron, we're going to want you there full time. So tell us when you're ready, which I just think is super interesting at this point in his career. It's not Tom Brady that you're letting kind of choose his own path. It's Aaron Rodgers, which still great in terms of the greatness during his prime. But when you think about the situation that's kind of in the dynamic that's setting it up, it's almost kind of looking like an excuse that when and if the Steelers are bad, say Aaron signs and they have a bad season, this will be the way that they can justify a reset. Am I right about that? Or is that something they don't even want to think about because their eyes are fully set on this working if this does come to fruition?
I mean, if they were going to reset, they had plenty of opportunities to do it. They just never tear it down far enough. Like at this point, for anyone that's ever flipped houses, it's never been my thing. I'm not good at that, but I have a lot of friends that do. And sometimes you just realize you're in a money pit and you're like, you know what? No matter what we do, we're not going to get out of this house alive. Like that's the way that this whole thing has felt for the Steelers ever since Big Ben retired. And, the funny thing is, this is just part of life in the NFL. Like, no matter what your favorite team is. I mean, we watched Brady retire and everybody just presumed that Mac Jones was going to be the next Tom Brady, which felt asinine to me and turned out to be that way. And maybe Drake May's the answer, but I don't know. Like Big Ben retires and we find out, man, it's really hard to replace Big Ben. Hey, I'm doing this wearing a Raiders shirt. Raiders fans have spent years eviscerating Derek Carr. Fine. Like Derek Carr's not great, but then you go through a year where you have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Like I just think we have to realize that the AFC particularly is as simple as, do you have a legendary quarterback? And if you don't have a legendary quarterback, you aren't going to win a lot of games in the AFC. So at this point, all everybody is doing is just sort of chasing their tail towards something. And the Steelers are no different than that. So yeah, I believe the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers have an understanding. Yes. I believe that they know that he's going to come in when he's ready. I also believe, just based on my common sense and talking to people, no real reporting here, I just believe that when they figured out, hey, he wasn't going to want to come in early, rather than sign him and deal with the egg on the face of we signed him, but we're not requiring him to be around, they're just letting him do his thing. And when he decides to come in, he decides to come in. I challenge how good that's going to make Pittsburgh. So when they're picking like 12th in the draft next year, we can look at all of this and say, would it have been worth it? Like I personally, at this point, I'd rip it down to the studs. I'd start Mason Rudolph. I would just rip this thing apart and start the whole process over.
And it's interesting because everybody's kind of pushback on ripping it down to the studs is we have to respect the talent that's there, especially on the defensive side, the history that they've built. When you think of, you don't just get TJ Watt for a decade. You don't just get Cam Hayward. You don't just get Mika Fitzpatrick. Like, you don't get these opportunities to have this. And so they think they're more of a piece away because of how Tomlin's able to keep them around 500, keep them as a wild card team headed into all of these playoffs, despite all of the quarterback struggles and just the offensive struggles. And so do you think that's playing a factor a little bit of pride, a little bit of respect for the players that you have on your team, where they don't, you think about the Raiders, like you think about the turmoil, as you probably know very well, you have a Max Crosby, you have these kind of generational guys that you just can't fully utilize because everything else is bad around it. And the blowback from that almost feels worse. But right now, I feel like the Steelers blowback might be a little bit tougher because of the Aaron Rodgers name following it around. But give me your take on just kind of all of that.
What do you do when you have a great player at a position that's important but doesn't actually win games? And that's like, I'm not just talking about like TJ Watt. Look across the board right now. The best pass rushers in the NFL. All right. Myles Garrett, Browns suck. Max Crosby, Raiders suck. TJ Watt, there ain't much there with when it comes to. Sorry, my phone is now ringing. That's the worst. There's not much when it comes to when it comes to any of those opportunities to win out of pass rushers. There's nothing there. So like that's the hardest part. Everybody sits there and says, "Why quarterback?" Well, because if your quarterback is great, you're going to win games you shouldn't have. Like look back at the Washington season last year and just how much Jaden Daniels did for that team. That was they played so far ahead of their skis. They were far better. I think Washington this year, when we get to rises and fallers, I love Washington, but sneak peek, there's reasons to be concerned about Washington. the problem is like when you get that greatness out of CJ Stroud immediately lifts up the Texans, right? So that's what everybody thinks a great player does. That's what a great quarterback does. The rest of the time, what do you do when you just have a great player that's not going to win you a ton of games? Like the answer is not to trade Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or TJ, because like if you do those things, like as a Raiders fan, you trade Max Crosby, you've just ripped my heart out and you've given me no point. I lived through it with Khalil Mack. It's the worst feeling in the world. But realistically, again, I'll remind people, and not just the Raiders, but bad teams. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing in a year that Devontae Adams had 1,000-yard receiving, in a year that Max Crosby was first or second in the league in sacks, and the team won 6 games that year. Like the problem here is that the equation runs one of two ways. The equation is either you got to be really good, like you got to be good across the board, you got to have good players everywhere, and then you can win with an okay quarterback, or you've got to have a great quarterback that can will you to victories. If you have a bad quarterback or you have an okay quarterback and the rest of your roster is meh, but you've got 1 or 2 stars, you aren't going to win games that way. So unfortunately, the answer is rip it down to the studs. But how can you continually do that? Like at some point, you have to keep the Max Crosbys and the Myles Garretts and the Watts and hope that you can build around them. But that takes years, and nobody wants to give it years to reclaim your team.
Yeah. No, and what's great about the question that you pose is kind of the biggest question surrounding this kind of offseason. It has such a ripple effect. It goes into everything else. It goes into everything we're just about to talk about in this entire episode across the board, because Aaron Rodgers and the effect that the quarterback position plays in the NFL couldn't be at a higher level right now. It is the maximum importance to success in the NFL, despite having, generational talents across the board. So I kind of want to jump into the breakthroughs kind of topic that we had set up next. Who's going to break through this season? That is always an interesting question to me. And I know we didn't dive deep into our chat before going into this about what does that even mean? Are we talking about a team that's looking to break through to a Super Bowl? Are we talking to a team that's looking to break into the playoffs? Are we talking about a team looking to break out of the top 5 picks every single draft, aka Tennessee, for example, or Cleveland, for example? And so I took it as which teams are going to break through and go to the Super Bowl. Ravens, Bills, always a question during this time of the year. What do they need to do? Lamar's multiple MVPs. Josh Allen, welcome to the MVP chat as well. What can we do to set our team up to get past Mahomes and the Chiefs? On the other side, I put the Commanders. You said something about the Commanders. I'm interested to get your take there. They did everything you'd want to do with a rookie quarterback in year 1, and it feels like they built off it in year 2. But I do see the pitfalls as well. I do see the sophomore slump as well. So I kind of want to get your take on what are the teams that are going to break through, and maybe some opinions on those teams I just mentioned.
So breakthrough is interesting because you're right. You can take this a lot of ways. And I've talked to so many players for the Bills over the last 3 years for Yahoo. And I ask the question all the time, like, what do you need to do to get through the Chiefs? And they'll tell you in an honest moment. Josh Allen has said flat out, you just keep doing what you do. And the funny thing is there's this poignant moment, and I'll give the Yahoo Sports CEO Ryan Spoon some credit. Like Spoon, when we were doing an all hands meeting one time with the whole company, everybody that's ever worked in a company knows they bring you in the room and you get a rah-rah speech. But Spoon played these quotes from Saban and Krzyzewski, and both of them were saying essentially the same thing. I'm paraphrasing here, but worry about being your best every day, not worry about being the best, because being the best is a variable you simply can't control. You cannot control if somebody in the room is better than you on that given day. All you can do is control that you were your best on that given day. And I think that's an important part of the Bills conversation because, when I worked at ESPN and I worked with Harry Douglas all the time and we had a daily radio show together, Harry used to always say when it came to the playoffs, if you get in the dance, you got a chance. Players say that all the time. If you get in the dance, you got a chance. And I think what we have to remember is that what you're really rooting for is not just Super Bowls, because Super Bowls take luck. What you're rooting for is proximity. And in my mind, your team needs to be in the proximity to win a Super Bowl. So are the Bills in that proximity? Yes. And has it broken wrong for them every single time? Yeah. Is that heartbreaking? Yes. Could they break through? If I had to pick one team right now that's not the Chiefs to break through on the AFC and bet my house on it, it's Buffalo, because it's Buffalo every year. Like they just need to have the year that they get the lucky ball. Like it just happens to go their way. So to that point, I don't think the Ravens or the Bills need to do anything different. I just think the Ravens and the Bills need to stay the course and trust that it's going to be their Sunday. I know like fans think this is a loser's mentality all the time, but it's not. Like, I'm a very realistic analyst and a very realistic fan. So, when I think breakthrough in the AFC, I think a good chance for breakthrough is the Chargers. As much as, the Chargers have been a darling every year and everybody says this is year. They do have a quarterback that last year in an offense where, frankly, we know Harbaugh is going to run the football. They've addressed the offensive line. This team has got more weapons this offseason, and the Chargers were better than people expected. I think breakthrough, the Chargers have an opportunity. The Broncos have an opportunity. These teams that last year teased us, but we got to remember they were a little ahead of schedule. So I think breakthrough comes from something like that. But if you're asking what team in the AFC not named Kansas City would I be comfortable putting in the Super Bowl, I still think that the AFC is not a one-team race. Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, they're in the same trough. They're eating out of the same bowl. It's just a matter of which dog's going to hunt, to use a Southernism. Like, which dog's going to hunt? I think any of those I would be comfortable with in the AFC.
Yeah, I really like that point across the board, and the Chargers are a great name. That one that I pondered a lot because their rise to fame, if you will, was very instant with Jim Harbaugh, and we kind of knew that going in. Harbaugh comes in and he makes winning programs. That's what he does, both college and in the NFL. He has no bad history of not being able to do that across the board, whether you like it or not. But yes, it's kind of becoming that era, though, where we're starting to have conversations about the Herberts, the Tuas, the Trevor Lawrences, those not veteran quarterbacks, but not young quarterbacks anymore. They're in the middle. They're on their second contracts. You're kind of like, okay, like, is the money worth it? Of course, it's going to be worth it to pay guys like that across the board with how the market's moving, because the other option is getting rid of that option and trying to go back to square one. As Tennessee, how that's going, as Cleveland, as all these teams in kind of quarterback purgatory, if you will. But the Chargers are interesting because Herbert scares me a little bit. I love everything that I see from Herbert on the field. I love his ability to move, not only in the pocket, but outside of the pocket, but his rocket arm across the board. They had a great defense that was ahead of schedule. But when they go up against the Texans, which the Texans were begging to lose to anybody that wanted to beat them last year until the playoffs, all of a sudden, they just shit the bed. I'm sorry for my language. They just did not look good in that game. And I think Herbert was a big part of that. Are you worried about this Herbert narrative that's building of he just can't get it done in the playoffs, even though it's been so tumultuous in terms of who's coaching that team, what's the organization, what's the plan of attack on the offensive side?
I don't know that I've seen a quarterback in the last 15 years get more benefit of the doubt heaped on than Herbert has. And I'm saying that right after, be clear, before Chargers fans at me and tell me I'm just being a Raiders fan homer, I will loudly say, I just said, I think the Chargers are a breakthrough candidate. And I think Justin Herbert has special abilities. I genuinely believe that. I also think it's okay. And for whatever reason, people have gotten so dug in on either I'm pro Herbert or I'm anti Herbert that they think the other side is just absolutely, full of it. And it's frustrating to me because I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like, the best of Justin Herbert, he can just will a team to a win that shouldn't have gotten it. The worst of Justin Herbert, he can play you right out of some of these big games. And I will say this, when I look at the schedule as a fan of a team in that division, when I look at the Chiefs, I'm like, yep, there's no chance. I mean, it's going to take, I understand the Raiders have beaten the Chiefs, but that, like, come on, it's better to be lucky than good. I sit there and I'm like, yeah, the Chiefs are going to do what the Chiefs are going to do. I don't think most fans even look at the Chargers and say, oh, damn, we got to play Justin Herbert this year. Like, just in some ways, it's almost Eli Manning-like, where the big moments are what we focus on. But the week in and week out, like, the whole, is Eli a Hall of Famer? I've had this debate with my Giants friends, fan friends, repeatedly. How many times did you start the season and say, oh, damn, we got to take on Eli and the Giants? There's no way we're beating Eli. Like, that just wasn't the way that worked, So, like, in my mind, I don't know, man. I think the Justin Herbert thing, part of the reason I think they break through is because I believe so much in Harbaugh. I really do. And I believe they're going to run the football like maniacs. I think they're going to be a very physical football team, which is going to present pick and choose opportunities for Herbert, which I like a lot. But I do think it's fair to start heaping expectations on Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, two quarterbacks that right now, I mean, yeah, you're right. You paid him because you had to pay him, but that's a little like getting married because you've been dating a long time. That doesn't actually work in the grand scheme of it. Like, how many friends do you know that's like, well, we got engaged because it's just time, that turned out to have a glorious, beautiful marriage? Like, that doesn't really work. And I feel like it's like, well, we paid Herbert because we it's the right thing to do. Trevor Lawrence, we gave him that big money, and like he's going to live up to it. Sure, I don't know, is he? Like, so I think it is the conversation around Justin Herbert is unnecessarily complicated. I think he's a really good quarterback. He's not in the same tier as the Josh Allens. He's not in the same tier as Lamar's. He's at the top of the next tier, and that's okay. Like, that's a really good spot to be, but that means the rest of your team better be firing on all cylinders if you want to win big games.
Exactly. And another name and another team that kind of goes into this breakthrough category, kind of in the same exact vein, but on the NFC side, is the Packers, I feel like. When you think about Jordan Love, on that side, I feel like he's in the same tier as Justin Herbert. I think he's proven a lot these past 2 seasons, especially the season before last, if you will, when you go back to the Cowboys win in the playoffs. But when we kind of reflect on that, it wasn't that impressive now that we look back on how the Cowboys have really stepped back. Last year, Love was banged up all year. I swear his knee did not want to work ever since they went to Brazil in week 1. And it looked like he was battling some things back. You kind of took a look at their wide receiver core. You didn't love it as much. Josh Jacobs was super crucial to their success in the run game and being able to open that up. But then you see Willis be able to come in when Love's hurt, and they still win 2 out of 3 games with him as the starting quarterback or something around those lines. And you're like, wait, is this Matt LaFleur's system that's working really well? Is this that Shanahan tie? Is this that McVay tie? Like, what is it? Is it Love? Is he able to be it? Because when he's on the field, I really like what I see. But when he's off the field, I don't think the Packers slowed down. And I think the Packers addressed things that we really like, made a historic pick with Golden in the first round, give him a new weapon because we just don't know with Watson. We just don't know with Dobbs and Wicks, etc., who's going to be there in the long term, as they're always in trade talks or injured, if you will, across the board. Where do you sit with the Packers? Because this is kind of something that I'm seeing in the NFC North, where my biggest take on that division is we could see a flip where the Lions step back, the Vikings definitely could step back, and we look at Chicago being the preseason darlings as they always are, and then Green Bay. I mean, you go 11-6 last year, you would have won multiple divisions, but you got third in the NFC North. What's kind of your take not only on the Packers but just kind of that division as a whole?
It's not an accident that the Lions were the team that proposed playoff reseeding, right? Because they looked around and said, wait, damn, that could be us this year. And, I think when we talk about fallers, I do think the Lions are a candidate to be a fall. Anytime you change both of your coordinators, we saw that with Philly. Like, what did that do for Philly after a Super Bowl appearance, right? And not only both of their coordinators, but the amount of position coaches that left for, the opportunity to rise with the coaches that left also. If you're Detroit, you're reimagining your entire coaching staff, it feels like. So while fans will champion some of the continuity that still existed from the room, it's just all going to be different. And that makes me nervous. But what also makes me nervous is the way we've covered Jordan Love since day one. Like, Jordan Love objectively sucked for the first half of his first season as a starter. And then he caught fire against some bad teams in the back half of it. And all of a sudden, we're like, no, pay the guy. This is going to be epic. This is going to be great. I'm like, based on half of one season? Like, that feels maddening to me. And last year, Jordan Love was really inconsistent. And we want to find a reason for Jordan Love to be inconsistent. But, like, so far, there isn't really proof of concept that Jordan Love is that guy. And I don't know that you can win in that division without that guy, right? So I think it's tough because I believe that they've done a great job. LaFleur has done a great job. His system has been far better than I ever expected. I do believe that the Packers, they did a brilliant thing in signing Josh Jacobs. Like, I've watched Josh Jacobs save seasons. Like, that was a great decision by them. I just think that there are question marks at the quarterback position that nobody wants to admit. And now you're doing everything you can to support that quarterback because you may or may not have the right guy. This year's a real prove it year. And I hear you on Chicago. The only thing I'd say is, how many years in a row are we like, Chicago's going to do it this year? And they did the smart thing. Anytime you sign or draft fat guys, I'm into it. Like, if you get offensive linemen, defensive line, if you address the interior of your football team, you are brilliant. So I'm into it. I'm in wait and see mode because I've been too hurt by my good predictions of the Bears in the past. Like, also, Ben Johnson's never been a head coach. Like, so we just presume that he walks in and it's like, oh, got this. Like, it's a totally different job. Being an offensive coordinator versus being a head coach are two completely different jobs. So we have no idea if that's even going to work. So I think we're just applying a lot of benefit of the doubt all over the NFC North.
Oh my gosh, 100% across the board. I think you could convince me on any sort of outcome and I would believe it in some sort of capacity in that division. And that's kind of rare because I feel like a lot of these divisions are pretty solidified across the board. But the NFC North could still be one of the strongest, but also could be more a little bit like the NFC West in a nature where it's just the battle to 10 wins next year. And whoever gets that 10 win wins the division. But we'll all think of it as a positive one, not a 10-win race like the AFC South, if you will, for example, which is a
That
division I
division is
kind of want to
trash.
go into.
That division is trash. Come on, like that's
No.
part of why playoff seeding can't. Like the
Yeah.
unspoken part of the playoff reseeding argument was, it turns into college football, which I cover a bunch for Yahoo.
Hmm.
Like it turns into, is a 10-win team out of the AFC South the same as a 10-win team out of the NFC South the same as the 10-win team out of the NFC North? Probably not. Like, and there's such scheduling inequities from within the conference that you're going to end up, it's no different than sitting there saying, so you're comfortable putting the top team from the ACC above the number 2 team in the SEC for no good reason other than their record. Like, all things are not created the same. Like, UNLV's football record is going to be better this year than the 5th best team in the SEC. That does not mean that UNLV deserves a higher seat. That's the NFL thing that will be happening, because the Buccaneers are going to win a division that is absolutely hot, steaming garbage. And I will say too, like the Michael Penix Jr. thing. Everybody's sitting here telling me that Kirk Cousins is out the door because they're going Penix. He started 3 games at the end of the season, 2 of which his completion percentage was around 55. He threw for a total of like 750 yards. And we're going to anoint him on a team that does have a chance, an outside chance to win a bad division. There's not if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm looking around at Kirk Cousins saying, I gave you $100 million. So guess what? I don't really give a damn if you like your situation. You like your $100 million that you got, you're going to remain here. And if Michael Penix Jr. isn't capable, because we just don't know, you're going to have to step in and play. That's what you got paid $100 million for, Kirk.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you bring up the Falcons because I wanted to get your take on them because I tried to group every team as a riser or faller, as everyone does in the offseason. And I just put them right in the middle where I'm just like, I can sell myself when you're looking at schedules. They have a line of Dolphins, Patriots, Colts, Panthers, Saints, Jets, Seahawks, Buccaneers, Cardinals. That's kind of a big stretch of time, if you will, for them. I can see them winning a lot of those games when we think about those teams across the board. So there could be a little Michael Penix hot streak, but that's after starting the season facing teams like the Buccaneers, the Commanders, the Bills, and also the 49ers. And so you're like, okay, maybe they're 1-4 to start the year, but then they rattle off 6 wins. It just feels like it's going to be an up and down Lollapalooza, if you will, in that division, as it always is. So let's go into risers and followers. I think this is a great transition. First team I want to talk about, I kind of already mentioned it, the AFC South. I think my biggest faller this year is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. They went 8-9 last year, second in the division. 8 wins was second place. Third place was 4 wins by the Jaguars, just for all the listeners here. And then the Houston won with 10 wins on that division. Now we have the Anthony Richardson versus Daniel Jones debates, where whenever we start selling ourselves on Daniel Jones might win the job, that's when I'm like, okay, so this is going to be really bad. And Anthony Richardson, we know the idea of him. He does a 360 backwards pass at Florida, and then we're like, you know what, we're drafting this guy in the top 5. And then we all forgot that it takes a little bit of development. He's that freak of nature that you want at the position and how it's moving, but he's not as buttoned up as a Jalen Milroe or a Lamar Jackson as you will as a passer coming into the league. I think Indianapolis could lose this division. I think they could go 4th place. Tennessee gets their quarterback in Cam Ward. You can have whatever you want to say about Cam Ward. He is better than anything they've had over the last 4 or 5 years. Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, new system, new coach, new everything. 4 wins last year. You could sell me on 6. I don't think we're going much higher than 8. If a best case scenario in year 1. Indianapolis, they traded away their offensive line. I just don't know what their defense is. Shane Steichen, good luck trying to make magic out of that. What's your take on the faller for the Indianapolis Colts this year?
So I believe Daniel Jones is the starter day 1 for the Indianapolis Colts. And so to your point on the faller, I think it's probably pretty realistic that they're going to fall. What is wild to me is the context that we forget. And this is why I tell anybody, like, if you really want good draft coverage, instead of listening to every single person that is out there that's suddenly a draft expert, if instead of doing that first, you can do that if that's what you're into. I love draft coverage. I've covered it. I covered the draft every year of my career so far in media for ESPN. I hosted all of our live streams, every live stream we ever did, and now for Yahoo I do it the same. The first thing you should do is hunt down, if you love a prospect, hunt down every person that you think covers college football at a really high level and ask them, DM them, tweet them, Instagram them, whatever you need to do, and ask about that. Because anybody that had their head pulled out of their ass that covered college football and watched any Anthony Richardson would have told you, square one, day one, the number one thing he needed was to be on the field. And the problem is you need to be able to absorb a lot of mistakes because he's got to learn. So, like, uncoachable traits, as Dan Orlovsky always said, and that's true. Like, he can make plays that will blow your mind, but then he struggles to do the simple things, right? What have we seen? Like, the injury in his rookie year was catastrophic because now all of a sudden the team went out, they won more games than anyone thought. That was supposed to be their 4-win year while he learned, and that didn't happen. So then all of a sudden he comes into a team with higher expectations with a little rust because he hasn't played in a year at all. And also he's still the guy that needed a bunch of games. He needs reps on the field. And then he didn't really get those. And so all of a sudden you get into this back and forth. He's on the field. He's not on the field. Like, this whole thing has been handled so poorly by the Colts from day one. They took somebody they knew, they acknowledged needed work, and then they didn't give him that work. So now you're in this weird situation where they're going to split reps with Daniel Jones. Like, Anthony Richardson, in my mind, unfortunately, through no fault of just his, like, it takes the team to ruin a player. I think the Colts played a big hand in ruining Anthony Richardson. So now what? Like, the only place that I differ with you is I don't know that I buy the Liam Cohen hype the same way everybody else buys the Liam Cohen hype. Like, I look at somebody that the Rams joyfully let walk out the building a couple of times, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I think there's a part of me that looks at Liam Cohen and says, I want to see it, and we look at it and say, well, look at what he did with Tampa Bay's offense. Okay, that's 2 straight offensive coordinators that have gotten head coaching jobs because of Baker Mayfield. Maybe it's time to start putting some of that praise on Baker Mayfield. Like, maybe that's what we're going to find. So I think there's a chance the Jags suck. I believe in Cam Ward. I do not believe that Callahan, the head coach of the Titans, has shown anybody any reason to give him any heaped praise. I think the Titans are a bad team. I think that they win 3 or 4 games this year, but Cam Ward looks good. They fire him. They have an all-new coaching staff that's coming in just to maximize the most. Like, I think the Titans end up like the Bears. Like, we sit here and watch the first overall pick flounder, and we say, well, it's the coach. So I think the problem here is that the Titans are going to suck. The Jags are going to suck. Maybe the Colts are going to suck. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, other than the Texans, there isn't another team in that division that puts up 6 wins. I genuinely think it has a chance to be one of the worst divisions we've ever seen. And that's all of these teams just need to suck it up and take the 2 or 3 years to rebuild the foundation to actually get good.
I can't disagree with anything you say, and I'm not even buying the Liam Cohen hype as well on my end, but I want to just be preseason okay right now. I don't want to say too many things that gets me in trouble when I'm like, I mean, they could win 8 games, but they also could win 4 again, or maybe 2, and be in this similar
by the way,
situation.
Like, you are right. Like, if you can't be excited about your team right now, whatever your team is, you should just stop watching. Like, if you're a Jags fan, you got to believe that Liam Cohen is the answer. If you're a Titans fan, you got to believe that Callahan is going to have the same success with Cam Ward that he had with Joe Burrow when he was in Cincinnati, right? Like, if you're a Colts fan, you're going to believe that this is the reminiscent of the run that got Daniel Jones paid. They won 8 games last year with trash quarterback. Like, you can argue the positive on all of it. I think that what we saw last year was not an accident. It's a trend in the NFL. There were 10, 12 teams last year that lost double-digit games. There are a substantial number of teams that suck. They're not tanking. They're just bad at football. And I think that that's going to be the same this year.
Exactly. There's a lot of, when you look at a lot of these divisions, there was clearly the top team, the middle team, which wasn't really competing with the top team, and then 2 really bad teams. You look at the AFC West, you look at the AFC South, you look at the NFC East, you look at the NFC South. Like, that's 4 divisions right there in the NFL with what, like you just said, double-digit losses. Hard to go into this year and get excited for a lot of those teams, unfortunately, but some have a little bit of excitement, like the Bears, as they always do. So, Jason, I want to go to you now. I brought up one of my followers. I want to pass it to you on, do you have a riser or do you have a follower or just a hot take maybe on both sides of those that you'd like to bring up here?
I got two fallers in the NFC. One is Washington, and let me be clear. I still think Washington is going to be a very good football team. I really do. But look at what we did to the Houston Texans after year one of CJ Stroud. We were like, oh God, this team's going to catapult and compete with the Chiefs. Turns out that wasn't the case. A lot of things went wrong for the Texans. Warren Sharp and Sharp Analytics did a really good breakdown of why last year was a historically lucky season for the Washington Commanders and some of the outcomes, in some of the fourth down conversions, and some of the drive conversions, some of the win probabilities. Like, if you just look at the analytics, I know I sound like a nerd right now, that team won 5 games more than most teams would in that situation. So I think that the Washington Commanders are a faller. I still think that they're a great candidate to win 9 or 10 games. I just think that we're going to look at a 10-win season and say, oh, what went wrong? Nothing. Like, and even people like Charles Robinson that I do inside coverage with, he talked to people around Washington last year during the season, like that worked for the team. And they openly acknowledged, look, we're playing so far ahead of where we should be right now because of Jaden. I think they realized that, hey, they still have talent deficiency. So I think Washington is a faller, but not a catastrophic faller, still a playoff caliber football team. The catastrophic faller in the NFC to me is the 49ers. Like, at some point, you are who you are. You're injured all the time. And like, the window shut. So I'm genuinely interested to see what happens when you've got old players, injured players, you've got holes on the roster. Like, it just, nothing is easy for the 49ers right now. And we thought last year was going to be the step back for the Rams. And instead, the Rams looked at by the playoffs like they could have gone to the Super Bowl. So I think the Rams run away with the NFC West. And now all of a sudden, we're talking about San Francisco not in the same category as the Rams, but we're asking, is San Francisco really better than where the Seahawks are, who are a bit of a rebuild? Are they really better than where the Cardinals are, who are sort of going to be stuck in mediocrity? I think San Francisco becomes part of that middle class you just talked about that's not scaring anybody. And that's a huge fall off in reputation for Lynch and Shanahan particularly.
100%. I like both of those. Personally, I'm a Seahawks fan, so anytime we can dig the 49ers, I am all there for it. But to go back to the Commanders for a second, I think another interesting piece that doesn't get talked about enough is Cliff Kingsbury. Great season when you think about the offense that he built for Jaden Daniels across the board. And it was great to see. But as we've seen in history, offenses and defenses start to pick up on their tendencies. They start to understand what's going to happen. So unless Daniels is about to continue to do what he does with his legs, which I think is great, he knows when to get out of the pocket. He does it immediately and he doesn't second guess his decision. We could see, just like what we saw with Arizona, where we got excited with Kyler and Kingsbury building something, and then the immediate step back. Yes, an injury involved really does derail that, but then that's when we start to see, oh wait, maybe the quarterback was propping up the kind of offensive scheme that's going on. But they go in and get Deebo Samuel, a dynamic weapon. We finally see Scary Terry become the wide receiver we knew he always was, and just needed a quarterback to throw to him. But what makes me excited about them and not want to put them as a follower, even though I agree 10 wins from 12 last year is not necessarily a fall, but to the media and to the casual fan, that will be catastrophic, just like the Texans, is Dallas. Are you buying it? Are you buying the George Pickens move? The Giants, I mean, talk about something interesting. The Eagles Super Bowl hangover, we have to talk about it. They finally hit the mountaintop. It's easy to kind of reverse a little bit. Is there any scenario in your head where you see the Commanders actually taking a step forward, though?
I don't see a step I will say I don't really see a step forward, but I do think that they had so many holes that they needed to address, and they had a really good offseason. So I think that while the record kind of sits in that range, the team is a better team, if that makes sense. I also want to go back to something you said about Kingsbury, because if you watch any of our shows from the beginning of last season, about 6 weeks into the year, there were people screaming that Jaden Daniels was incapable of throwing the ball past the line of scrimmage because everything was at or behind the line of scrimmage. Cliff Kingsbury put on a master class last year on slowly developing what you're asking a quarterback to do on the field. And frankly, I think you can look at the malpractice of some of the other quarterbacks that were drafted last year and say, hey, if only they'd had an offensive coordinator that did the right thing the right way, the right time, with Cliff Kingsbury. So let's stick with that concept for a second, because when we talk about risers and fallers, I think we have to understand coaching language matters. I'll go to your Seahawks for a second. When Mike McDonald became their head coach, look back at his defenses with the Ravens. Defensive stars of the Ravens at the time said, man, it took 2 or 3 years to really understand this defense. We're asked to do so much. took a couple of years. What we're forgetting about Seattle is that they're 1 year in to what I think is a 3-year language, right? So this year, their defense takes a big step forward because they understand their assignments better. They understand what's being asked of them in the defense. It's such communication. One of the reasons that I think the most overhyped team in all of the NFL this year is the New England Patriots. I cannot believe they are a favorite in 11 of their games. Two reasons. I covered Mike Vrabel with the Tennessee Titans when I was living in Nashville. I think Mike Vrabel is a very good head coach, but the legend of Vrabel has grown to an almost comical level where we're sitting here implying that he turned around and took just hot garbage and made that a Super Bowl team. He did have Derrick Henry. I mean, he did have some pieces on that team. But the other side of it is Josh McDaniels is notorious for having one of the toughest offenses to learn the language of in the world. In fact, I talked to a wide receiver that played in McDaniel's offense when he was hired by the Raiders. And I sat down with him and I said, what do I need to know? And he said, man, I played in the league for every coach imaginable. I've never felt more lost than when I was in Mike McDaniel's offense because it was like a foreign language. That's from somebody that played 10 plus years in the NFL. I just look at Drake. We're just presuming that Drake May with Josh McDaniels is going to be delightful because he's going to be able to speak that language right away. Red zone communication is an issue in Josh McDaniels' offenses in first year. Like these quarterback processing things can be issues. Like I think we just need to understand that coaching matters so much to what we expect of the team. So while I think Vrabel's a very good coach, and while I think Drake May is going to be a star quarterback in this league, I don't think that, look, if the Patriots win 6 or 7 games this year, that's a huge leap. That's a massive leap. But we're sitting here talking about the Patriots like they're going to be a wild card contender. And I don't see that. They are still a roster depleted all over the place that needs help.
100%. I couldn't agree with more with all your takes across the board, and you set yourself up really well, saying you're a very realistic analyst across the board. And I feel like people's algorithms are starting to fail their mindsets a little bit because they're starting to see too much of the same thing, and they're starting to buy or sell whatever they're hearing too much. Patriots, like you said. 49ers, like you said. Commanders, I mean, I haven't actually seen somebody say they're a follower. I've seen more hype behind them because, like we just said, the machine tells us we want them to go forward. We want them to continue on. And so I really like that take because it's actually realistic across the board. And I love your call out at the beginning of that where you just said Jane Daniels started throwing the ball down the field more and more as the season went on, thanks to Kingsbury's system. Thought the same way about Bo Nix and Sean Payton. I went to week 1, Bo Nix versus Seattle. I was comically laughing with my brother saying, this man is checking it down to Williams every single play. His air yards per attempt was historically low in week 1. And everyone's like, well, why'd they draft him? Like, that was terrible. They were just getting him comfortable in the pocket because every time he threw it down the field, he threw 2 interceptions that game, both down the field to a Seahawks defense, like you just said, that was learning the language. So that was just a bad pass. That wasn't, oh, Mike McDonald's system is just so good already week 1. And so I'm really fascinated in these year 2 quarterbacks. And can we just touch on real quick, where's Drake May? I haven't heard anything about Drake May. I hope he's doing well. I love a quarterback that's not in the news, but is he progressing? Are we getting reports that he's making leaps and bounds? All I hear is stuff about all the other quarterbacks in that class, but nothing about our boy Drake May.
He's just a quiet dude, you know, and it's interesting because Patriots fans, like I'm currently living in Connecticut. ESPN moved me up here years ago after years in the South. And I watched the post Brady era. I watched that entire fan base just give up on a team. And it is the weirdest thing in the world to me when you have gone through decades of dominance to just all of a sudden be out of patience and want everybody fired every year because you win championships. And it's like, man, all right, understand the rebuild takes a little bit. Like if you were in the gym and you got in the best shape of your life and you took a year off and you got a little fluffy, like it ain't gonna change in a week, you know? So I think you're right. And I will say, when it comes to my mannerisms in fandom, every single year, there's a tradition in my life. Every single year in the summer, Raiders fans, because I do a lot of work with the team. It's my favorite team. You know, I enjoy it. Every year I get destroyed by Raiders fans that tell me I'm a dumbass because I'm not high enough on the team. I'm not a real fan, whatever that means. And then all of the, you don't know what you're talking about. Why are you praising the Chargers? Why are you praising the Chiefs? These teams are going to take a step back and you suck. And then by the time we get to near the end of the season, when I'm not losing my mind because the team won 6 games, which is kind of where I thought they would be, fans are like, oh, why are you supporting this trash, this garbage? You need to be calling more people out. And I'm like, I just think as fans in general, if we would all take a step back and genuinely look for writers and analysts that we think are giving thoughtful analysis. You don't have to agree with it. Just understand the math of how they got there. If you're finding thoughtful analysis, start supporting those, because what happens is in the summer, you're only reading cheerleading articles and then you buy into all of it. And then by the fall, you are devastated because you bought a false bill of goods from day one. If we all as fans were more honest about some of the people that we watch on TV that clearly only watched Red Zone and have no idea if your team's any, like, stop watching them, stop listening to them. And when you read stuff that is written from just glory be to God, our team's going to win the Super Bowl, like, if that's your angle that you're reading all summer, stop. Force yourself to read actual real analysis. I think it will make your fandom less manic through the portions, like through the heartbreak that comes with, like, we're all but one fan base is going to be heartbroken this year. Great. So now that you know that all but one fan base is going to be heartbroken, how do you get the smartest analysis you can so that when you are heartbroken, you're at least like, you know what? I enjoyed the ride. I want to enjoy the ride.
Jason, you couldn't have ended this episode better. I really like that monologue there at the end about what it means to be a fan, what it means to understand the algorithm and understand what we're all fighting for here. Like you just said, only one team is going to come out not upset about this season coming up. So, Jason, I appreciate you coming on. Again, Yahoo Sports, the Inside Coverage podcast. If you don't already, make sure to follow all of his stuff below. Jason, as you can tell, is locked in on everything, every single team across the board, and this is why I had to have him on. Jason, I really appreciate your time today. Everybody else, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the NBA playoffs, but get ready. The NFL is right around the corner. As I always say, have a great weekend, and cheers, everyone.